Every building has rooms you're not supposed to enter. These stories explain why. Story 1. I was 27 when I first heard the door slam shut behind me. It was a cold October night, rain drumming against the cracked windows of the old municipal building where I'd taken a part-time job as a night shift clerk. The place had been slated for demolition, but the city kept a few rooms locked for archival purposes, while the rest was gutted. The hallway was a narrow strip of gray concrete, lit by flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed like insects. A sign, rusted, half-peeled, read, "Restricted Access. Authorized personnel only." My supervisor, Mr. Havel, had warned me not to stray beyond the reception desk. "If you hear a door click, don't open it," he'd said, his eyes flicking to the far wall where a single steel door stood, its keypad dead and its glass panel frosted. Curiosity is a selfish thing. I found myself, after my shift, walking past the locked door, the weight of his warning pressing against my ribs. The keypad was a relic, 3 digits that no one seemed to know. I pressed a random 1, 2, 3. Nothing. The metal shivered, as if it sensed my touch, and the light above it sputtered, casting a thin line of amber onto the hallway floor. The building creaked, and for a moment, I thought I heard a low hum from behind the door, a sound like distant machinery, or perhaps a breath. I returned to the desk, pulled out the old master keycard from my pocket, an obsolete swipe that still worked on the main entrance. I slid it into the slot beside the keypad. The door shivered again, and the lock clicked open. The sound was a metallic sigh, like a wound finally breathing. Inside, darkness swallowed the narrow room. I fumbled for my phone's flashlight, its beam cutting through a stale, cold air that smelled of damp paper and something metallic, faintly sweet. The walls were lined with shelves, each bearing glass jars, metal tins, and wooden boxes, all sealed with wax. Labels, some in faded ink, some in a hand that trembled, read, "Specimen A, Sample 12, do not open." I could see nothing moving, but the air seemed to pulse, a slow, rhythmic thrum that made my skin crawl. I reached for a tin marked "Human, Blood Type O-." As my fingers brushed the lid, a whisper, no louder than the rustle of my own breath, escaped the room. It sounded like a child's giggle, then a sigh, then a low moan that rose and fell, as if the room itself were inhaling. My heart hammered. The flashlight flickered, and the beam fell on a tarnished brass plate set into the floor. The plate bore a single word, etched in a shaky hand. "Welcome." I slammed the door shut, the lock snapping shut with a final, definitive click. The hallway lights hummed, unchanged. I stood there, trembling, as the rain hammered harder against the building, as if trying to wash away the sound of the door closing. When I turned to the desk, the sign above it now read, "Restricted Access. Do not enter." The fluorescent tubes above the locked door dimmed, then burst in a brief, bright flare before sputtering out forever. I never returned to that building. The demolition crew later told me the room had never existed on any blueprint. They said the door had always been a wall. Yet sometimes, when I walk past a locked hallway in a hotel or a school, I can still hear that faint, rhythmic thrum, and I wonder if the house is still waiting for someone to turn the key again. Story 2. We moved into the Victorian house on Willow Lane during the summer I turned 12. It was love at first sight for Mom. A fixer-upper, she called it, though the realtor had hesitated when she mentioned the sealed-off room on the second floor. "Best to leave it be," he'd said. Mom laughed it off, but that night, I caught her staring at the staircase, her smile gone. The door sat at the top of the landing, its oak frame warped with age, a rusted lockbox welded to the knob. Mom's answer to my questions was always the same. "It's not ready yet. Let's leave it for now." Her tone was gentle, but her eyes flickered like she'd swallowed something sharp. Still, the room haunted me. Every creak above felt like footsteps. I'd lie awake, imagining shadows shifting behind the door when the hallway light bled through the crack. One evening, I found a skeleton key in Dad's workshop. It was cold in my palm, heavy with secrets. The lock gave way with a sickening snap. The door didn't open. It pulled, as if something inside was holding it shut. My breath fogged in the air as I forced it wider, revealing a darkness so thick it felt physical. The hallway light died behind me. The room was smaller than I expected, its walls papered with yellowed floral prints. But it wasn't dust or decay that froze me. It was the arrangement. A crib sat in the corner, its bars dulled by time. Next to it, a mobile with chipped butterfly wings hung still. On the floor lay a pile of something. Bundles of old diapers, maybe, though they were too perfect, too neatly folded, as if waiting to be used. And then I saw the box. It was wooden, footlocker-sized, set in the center of the room. Nails lined its seams like veins. My fingers trembled as I pried it open. Inside were photographs, hundreds of them. Newborns, mostly. Strangers. But one face leaped out at me. Me, as a baby, swaddled in blue. How had I not recognized this? My breath hitched. There were other items, too. A tiny shoe, a hospital bracelet, a lock of my hair. A noise behind me made me spin. For a heartbeat, I swear I saw her. A woman in a faded blue dress, her face pressed to the door, her lips moving in a silent plea. Then nothing. The room was empty. I fled, slamming the door shut, and reset the lock before Mom or Dad could notice. But that night I couldn't stop crying. How had my memories been tucked into that box? Why had they moved us here, to this house, this room? When I asked Mom about the room the next day, she went pale. "We're selling the house," she said, but her voice shook. We left within a week. Dad packed in silence. Now, I live in a plain apartment with no stairs. But sometimes, in the dead of night, I feel a draft at the base of my door, and I swear I hear a soft clink, like a key turning. I've never spoken of that room, but I still dream of the woman in blue, her eyes filled with a sorrow that isn't mine. "It's not ready yet," she's saying. "It's never ready." Story 3. I never meant to find it, but in a house this old, creaking its secrets with every draft, some mysteries reveal themselves whether you want them to or not. It began with a sound, not loud, but deliberate. A soft scritch-scritch, like fingernails on wood, coming from behind the false bookshelf in the study. I'd been cataloging my late aunt's estate, dusty ledgers, yellowed journals, the sour scent of forgotten linen. The bookshelf seemed loose, so I tugged. It swung inward with a groan. There, set into the stone wall, was a door. Small, iron-bound, so low I'd have to crawl. Its handle was blackened, frozen with rust. But the keyhole gleamed, polished from use. I asked the neighbors. Old Mrs. Gable, who'd known my aunt since childhood, only crossed herself. "Best leave it be," she said, her voice brittle. "Some doors aren't meant to open." That night, the scratching returned, louder. I lay awake, heart thrumming, convinced I heard a voice, just beneath the noise, a whisper, syllables warped, as if trying to speak through water. Curiosity is a slow poison. I found the key 3 days later, tucked inside a music box shaped like a birdcage. When I lifted it, the box emitted a single shrill note, like a scream cut short. The key was cold, too cold. That evening, I stood before the door. My hands shook. I told myself I'd just look, just see what was there. The key turned with a heavy clunk. The door opened inward, exhaling air that smelled of damp stone and something older, like burnt hair and wet paper. Beyond it, a narrow corridor sloped down, barely wide enough for my shoulders. The walls were rough-hewn, slick with moisture. I brought a flashlight. The beam trembled as I crept forward. 10 feet in, I saw markings, crude symbols carved into the rock, overlapping, frantic. Then, a single chair, wooden, splintered, facing a blank wall. And on the wall, words, written not in paint or ink, but something darker. They looked pressed into the stone, as if the words had been burned by touch. I am still here. Below it, a child's drawing, a stick figure with too many eyes, standing inside a box. The eyes were scratched out. My breath fogged. The temperature had dropped. I should have turned back. But then, directly behind me, the door slammed shut. I whirled. No wind. No one. The key was still in my hand. The flashlight flickered. In the stuttering light, the drawing on the wall changed. The scratched eyes were back. All 8 of them. And now, they blinked. A breath touched my neck. Not mine. I dropped the light. It rolled, casting jagged shadows. In that broken glow, I saw footprints in the dust. Small, bare feet, leading from the chair. Toward me. Something inhaled behind me. Deep, wet, like lungs full of gravel. I scrambled for the door, fumbling the key. Locked. From the outside. The scratching started again. Not on wood. On bone. I haven't been able to leave. They found the house empty. No signs of struggle. Just the hidden door, sealed again. No trace of how it closed. But if you press your ear to it on quiet nights, you might hear me. Not screaming. Knocking. And sometimes, just once, I managed to whisper back, "Don't open it."